Ethan Blake's wine glass froze halfway to his lips as the woman across from him rolled up her sleeve, revealing a distinctive phoenix tattoo on her forearm. His heart hammered against his ribs as 7 years of carefully buried memories crashed over him like a tidal wave. "Maya," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the restaurant's soft jazz music. The athletic woman with piercing dark eyes looked up from her menu, confusion flickering across her face. "I'm sorry, do we?" She stopped mid-sentence, her menu dropping to the white tablecloth. Ethan Blake." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Maya Torres, the woman who had vanished from his life 7 years ago, the woman whose son he'd been raising, was sitting 3 feet away from him on what was supposed to be a simple meeting. "This can't be happening," Maya breathed, her trained composure cracking. As one of the city's most sought-after private bodyguards, she rarely let anything shake her. But this was impossible. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our amazing tales. And drop a comment right now telling us what you think is going to happen next. To understand how two people could end up in such an impossible situation, we need to go back 7 years. Ethan Blake wasn't always the reclusive billionaire he'd become. 7 years ago, he was a rising tech mogul, ambitious and fearless in business. Maya Torres was a struggling martial arts trainer, teaching self-defense classes in a cramped downtown studio to make ends meet. Their worlds collided during a corporate charity event where Maya was working security. Ethan, impressed by her professionalism and struck by her fierce intelligence, asked her out. What followed was 7 months of the most intense romance either had ever experienced. Maya was everything Ethan hadn't known he needed. She was strong, independent, and saw right through his corporate facade to the man underneath. Ethan was Maya's anchor in a chaotic world, someone who believed in her dreams when no one else would. But Ethan's success had made him enemies. Vincent Kozlov, a Russian investor whom Ethan had publicly exposed for fraud, wanted revenge. And he'd found the perfect target. The attack came on a rainy Thursday night. Maya was leaving her studio when 3 men cornered her in the alley. Despite her training, she was outnumbered and caught off guard. The beating was brutal, calculated to send a message. What they hadn't counted on was that Maya was 7 months pregnant. When Maya woke up in the hospital 3 days later, her world had shattered. The doctors had managed to save her baby, who was born premature but healthy, but her injuries were severe. Worse, Ethan was nowhere to be found. What Maya didn't know was that Ethan had received a clear message from Kozlov: disappear, or watch everyone he cared about die. The attack on Maya was just the beginning. Faced with the choice between his own desires and Maya's safety, Ethan made the hardest decision of his life. He vanished. But he couldn't abandon his child completely. Through a network of lawyers and social workers, Ethan arranged for the baby to be placed with a safe guardian, himself, using a false identity. Maya, struggling with her injuries and believing Ethan had abandoned them both, signed the papers, thinking she was giving her son to a loving family. She left the city that same week, vowing never to return. Now, 7 years later, they sat across from each other in Giovanni's, the city's most exclusive restaurant. Maya had returned to the city for a new assignment, a high-profile protection job that paid enough to set her up for life. She had no idea her client was Ethan Blake. "You look..." Ethan started, then stopped. How do you compliment someone who disappeared from your life under the worst possible circumstances? "Different," Maya finished. Her body was leaner now, more muscular. Scars from that night 7 years ago were hidden beneath her professional attire, but Ethan knew they were there. "You now look rich, successful, untouchable," she said to him. The bitterness in her voice cut deep. "Maya, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." Maya's voice was controlled, professional. "You got what you wanted from me, and when things got complicated, you disappeared. Some people just aren't built for responsibility." Ethan felt like he'd been punched. If only she knew that for the past years, he'd been raising their son, watching him grow, teaching him to ride a bike, helping with homework, being the father he'd never had himself. Actually, there's something you need to know, she said, pulling out a professional-looking folder. My security firm got a contract this week from Blake Industries. Your head of security hired us after some credible threats came in. She slid the folder across the table. They arranged this meeting so you could meet your new bodyguard. Neither of us knew who we'd be sitting across from tonight. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. Maya Torres, the woman whose heart he'd broken to save her life, was now being paid to protect him from the very danger he'd been trying to shield her from. 3 days later, Maya stood in the foyer of Ethan's mansion, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The house was exactly what she'd expected, all marble and mahogany, with enough security cameras to monitor a small country. Ms. Torres will be staying in the guest wing, Ethan explained to his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. She's here for security purposes. And who might you be protecting us from? Asked a young voice from the top of the grand staircase. Maya looked up and froze. A boy, maybe 7 years old, was descending the stairs with the confident swagger that only children of wealthy families possessed. He had Ethan's dark hair and strong jawline, but his eyes were exactly like hers. Leo, this is Ms. Torres, Ethan said, his voice carefully neutral. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Cool. Are you like a secret agent? Leo bounded down the remaining steps, his excitement infectious. Dad never tells me anything interesting about his work. Maya's heart clenched. This beautiful, vibrant child called Ethan Dad, and the easy affection between them was obvious. But those eyes, she knew those eyes. Something like that, Maya managed, her professional training kicking in. What grade are you in? 2nd grade. I'm 7, but I'm really smart for my age. Dad says I get that from both my parents. Leo grinned, showing a gap where his front tooth had recently fallen out. The word both hit Maya like a physical blow. She glanced at Ethan, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Leo, why don't you go finish your homework? Ethan suggested. Ms. Torres needs to get settled in. As the boy ran off, chattering about his math worksheet, Maya turned to Ethan with fire in her eyes. We need to talk. Now. In Ethan's study, surrounded by leather-bound books and photos of Leo at various ages, Maya confronted the man who had turned her world upside down twice. That boy, she said, her voice shaking with barely controlled emotion. He looks exactly like me. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The eyes, the smile, even the way he tilts his head when he's thinking. It's uncanny. Maya stepped closer, studying the family photos on his desk. When did you adopt him? 6 years ago, Ethan replied carefully. Right after I left the city, Maya's voice was dangerously quiet. Tell me this is a coincidence, Ethan. Tell me you didn't deliberately seek out a child who looked like me to fill some twisted void. You think I'm that sick? Ethan's voice was rough with pain. You think I'd use an innocent child to replace you? I don't know what to think. You disappeared from my life without a word, and now I find you raising a boy who could be my twin. Either you're more manipulative than I ever imagined, or... She stopped, unwilling to voice the impossible thought forming in her mind. Or what, Maya? She shook her head, stepping back. The resemblance was striking, yes, but children often looked like people they weren't related to. She was letting her emotions cloud her judgment. Nothing. I'm being paranoid. But even as she said it, something deep in her chest ached with recognition whenever she looked at Leo. Maya, there are things about that time, things I can't explain right now. But I need you to know that everything I did to protect the people I loved. Stop speaking in riddles, Ethan. If there's something I should know about Leo, There's nothing you need to know except that he's a good kid who deserves to be safe. That's why you're here. Maya stared at him, frustration and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope, warring in her chest. The resemblance between her and Leo was too strong to ignore, but without proof, she was just torturing herself with impossible dreams. Fine, she said finally. But I meant what I said earlier. I'm here to do a job. Nothing more. Over the next week, Maya threw herself into her job with professional determination. She studied Ethan's schedule, identified security vulnerabilities, and implemented new protocols. She also spent time with Leo, telling herself she was just being thorough about protecting him. But every moment with the boy was torture and joy combined. He was brilliant, funny, and kind, everything she'd hoped her son would become. He showed her his drawings, proudly displayed his latest soccer trophy, and chattered endlessly about school and friends. Ms. Torres, do you have kids? Leo asked one evening as she helped him with a science project about constellations. Maya's hand stilled on the star chart. No, sweetheart. I don't. That's sad. You'd be a really good mom. You're patient and you listen, and you know cool stuff like how to punch bad guys. The words hit deeper than they should have, Maya thought, her chest tightening with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Meanwhile, the threats against Ethan were escalating. Kozlov, now operating from prison through a network of associates, had learned that his old enemy was being protected by a female bodyguard. He was planning something big. The first real attempt came on a Tuesday morning. Maya was walking Leo to school when she spotted the black SUV that had been following them for 3 blocks. Her instincts screamed danger. Leo, she said calmly, we're going to play a game. When I say, now, you're going to run to that blue car over there and get in the back seat. Can you do that? The 7-year-old nodded, sensing the seriousness in her tone. The SUV's doors opened, and 2 men stepped out. Maya recognized the cold professionalism immediately. These weren't random criminals. They were Kozlov's people, and they were here for the boy. Now, Leo. Run. What followed was 90 seconds of pure, controlled violence. Maya moved like a force of nature, her years of training and maternal instinct combining into something deadly. She disabled the first attacker with a precise strike to his solar plexus, used his falling body as leverage to kick the second man in the chest, and had both unconscious on the sidewalk before Leo had even reached the car. But in the struggle, Leo's shirt had torn, and Maya saw something that made her blood freeze. There, on the boy's left shoulder, was a small, crescent-shaped scar. Maya knew that scar. She'd kissed it 100 times in the hospital, a tiny mark left by the 4-line that had helped save her premature baby's life. It was the kind of detail that only a mother would remember, would carry with her every day for 7 years. The world tilted on its axis. This wasn't just Ethan's adopted son who happened to look like her. This was her baby. Her Leo. That night, after Leo was safely in bed and the police had finished their reports, Maya confronted Ethan one final time. The scar, she said simply. Ethan closed his eyes. You saw it. I kissed that scar every day for 3 weeks in the NICU. I know every detail of my baby's body, Ethan. How could you let me believe he was gone? Because he was safe, Ethan said desperately. Because I knew that as long as you thought he was with strangers, you'd stay away. And as long as you stayed away, you'd be alive. That wasn't your choice to make. It was the only choice I could live with. Ethan's composure finally cracked. Do you think this was easy? Do you think I enjoyed lying to our son every time he asked about his mother? Do you think I didn't miss you every single day? Maya stared at him, seeing the man she'd fallen in love with beneath the layers of guilt and protection he'd built around himself. You should have trusted me, she whispered. I should have, he agreed. But I was young and scared and desperate to keep you both safe. Maya, I need you to know, Leo is happy. He's loved, he's secure, he has everything he needs. Except his mother. Except his mother, Ethan acknowledged. But she's here now. The weight of 7 years, of choices made in desperation and love, hung between them. Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware that in this mansion, a family was being reborn in the most complicated way possible. What happens now? Maya asked. Ethan looked toward the stairs where their son slept peacefully, protected and loved but unaware of the truth about the woman who had given birth to him. Now, he said, we figure out how to be a family. 6 months later, the Blake mansion had transformed from a fortress of solitude into a real home filled with laughter and love. Mom, can you help me with my science project? Leo called from the kitchen table, where he was surrounded by cardboard planets and paint. Maya looked up from her coffee, still getting used to hearing that word. After weeks of careful conversations and family therapy, Leo had learned the truth about his parentage. The transition hadn't been easy, but children are more resilient than adults often give them credit for. What's the project about? She asked, sitting beside him. Solar systems. Did you know that some planets have more than one sun? I did know that. Did you know that some families are like that too? Sometimes it takes time for all the pieces to come together in the right orbit. Leo grinned, paint smudged on his cheek. Is that why it took you so long to come home? Maya's breath caught. Home. This mansion, with its marble floors and security systems, had somehow become home. Not because of the luxury, but because of the two people who shared it with her. Something like that, sweetheart. Ethan appeared in the doorway, dressed for another day of running his empire, but he paused to watch them work together. Kozlov's trial starts next week, he said quietly. Maya nodded. With her testimony and evidence of the years-long harassment, the man who had torn their family apart would finally face justice. Good. It's time. Are you nervous about testifying? No, Maya said, and meant it. I'm not that scared woman anymore. I'm not running. Ethan smiled, the first truly relaxed smile she'd seen from him in months. No, you're not. As she watched Leo carefully add yellow rings to his cardboard Saturn, Maya reflected on the strange journey that had brought them back together. 7 years ago, they'd been torn apart by fear and circumstances beyond their control. But sometimes the best families aren't the ones that form easily. They're the ones that fight their way back to each other against impossible odds. Hey, Mom. Leo looked up at her with those familiar eyes, her eyes. I'm glad you're here. Me too, baby, Maya whispered, finally allowing herself to believe that this was real, that this was forever. Me too. And that's the incredible true story of how a blind date became the reunion of a lifetime. What did you think of this amazing tale? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you loved this story as much as I loved sharing it, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.